On November 17, 2019, Marshal Iwaasa said goodbye to his mother for the last time. The 26-year-old drove to a storage unit to collect some belongings before heading back to college. That night, he spent 7 hours failing to access his unit. He finally got inside around 6 a.m. and didn't leave for 2 hours. 5 days later, hikers found his burned-out truck a 14-hour drive away in the remote Canadian wilderness. There is no record of how he got there. No transactions for gas, no CCTV camera footage along the 745 miles of roadway or in the storage facility itself. Marshal Iwaasa has been missing ever since. What happened to Marshal Iwaasa? Was this a case of a young man abandoning his former life, or was there foul play involved? Today, we'll investigate his disappearance and find out what most likely happened. Iwaasa and his sister, Paige Fogan, were close up until he disappeared. They exchanged text messages on a weekly basis. She described him as quiet and reserved, and very gentle and kind. Iwaasa was born on January 3, 1993. He grew up in the industrial town of Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, just an hour north from the Montana border. He was outdoorsy, camped regularly, and played football and rugby. After graduating high school, Iwaasa dove into the world of bodybuilding. Throughout his life, Iwaasa and his family frequently went on trips, celebrated holidays together, and were a very loving and close family. Iwaasa's early career included working various manual labor jobs throughout southern Alberta. This is common in a region known for its oil and gas industries. Throughout that time, Iwaasa stayed in his hometown of Lethbridge. By his mid-30s, he enrolled in an IT program at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology and started a new life in Calgary. The summer prior to Iwaasa's disappearance, Fogan flew home from Hawaii to visit her family in Lethbridge. During the trip, conversations with her brother led her to believe Iwaasa wasn't being honest about his experiences at college. She's quoted as saying, "He would throw kind of hints to me," she said, adding that Marshall would say things like, "In my field, sometimes you don't need the degree. It's just kind of who you know and your experience." Fogan believed Marshall was kind of testing the waters of "I don't know if I'm going to go to school." We just kind of left it at that. Whenever he was ready to tell us, we didn't really know, but we didn't look too much into it. We just kind of let it be how it was. Investigators discovered that Iwaasa had been withholding information about college from his family. It turns out he had been put on academic probation at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. Not only that, but he also let his cell phone plan lapse in the weeks before he vanished. These discoveries are troubling. Some believe they prove investigators' belief that the stress Iwaasa was under played a role in his disappearance in the following months. His family feels otherwise. Let's break down the final timeline before Iwaasa went missing. Records show that Iwaasa made his last financial transaction on Friday, November 15, 2019. Sunday, November 17th, Iwaasa cleaned up the basement unit he rented from a Calgary family. That evening, Iwaasa took the approximately 2-hour drive back to Lethbridge in his dark blue 2009 GMC Sierra. His mother, Tammy Johnson, was having computer issues and asked for his help. At 11 p.m., Iwaasa told his mother he was going to pick something up from his storage locker in town before heading back to Calgary. The main entrance to the storage unit requires a code to gain access. It also records each time a code is entered. This system let investigators know that Iwaasa's first attempt was around 11:30 p.m. According to Iwaasa's family, who has the log of entries, he made a few more tries but could not get into the unit. Attempts were stopped until the storage unit was finally opened hours later at 6 a.m. Marshal Iwaasa was in the unit until about 8:30 a.m. This was the last time anyone knew where Iwaasa was. Investigators weren't sure if he was alone at that time or exactly what happened next. The case picks back up on Saturday, November 23rd. Hikers make their way along an old logging road in the remote wilderness near Pemberton, British Columbia. This is an approximately 14-hour drive away from Lethbridge. The hikers are heading to the Brian Waddington Hut located in Felix Creek on the shores of Long Lake. The hut is located near the peaks of Mount Aragon, Shadowfax, Gandalf and Peregrine. It is about 9 to 12 miles away from the main roads. There are only two ways to reach the distant hut. One, along the Felix Creek FSR, the main logging road mentioned earlier. The other way is the Felix Creek Trail. The FSR ends where the Felix Creek Trail begins. The trail requires a 2 to 3 hour hike before reaching the hut. To drive along the trailhead is incredibly arduous and requires an incredibly skillful off-road driver. GPS doesn't work in this region, and only a vehicle with four-wheel drive would be able to cross the rocky and slick terrain. Also, it's important to note that the Brian Waddington Hut requires online registration for any visitors. Marshal Iwaasa was never registered on the hut's guest list. The group of hikers discover Iwaasa's 2009 GMC Sierra, but find it is completely destroyed. All that's left is burnt out, half of the vehicle. Around the truck are various personal items in disarray. The hikers reported having an immediate sense of danger. They felt as if they had stumbled across a crime scene. They were right. The hikers took a number of photos of the items scattered across the scene. These included 3 smashed phones, which belonged to Iwaasa. There was also an Xbox, PlayStation, an expired passport, and clothing everywhere. Parts of the truck had been stripped, including the power steering column, which requires maintenance skills and particular tools to pull out. It should also be noted that Iwaasa had recently finished paying off the truck. Amongst the other items strewn about were contact lenses, contact solution, a Mountain Hardware Scrambler 30 backpack, a college-issued Samsung laptop, and Iwaasa's wallet. It's believed to be a Nixon wallet with a screen spot for a license. They also found his most recent phone, a pearl-colored Samsung Galaxy S6. The hikers made their way back down the trailhead and reported their findings to the British Columbia Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The RCMP spent 2 days traveling to the site due to adverse conditions. They arrived on November 25th and began documenting the scene. At the time, authorities did not realize that this crime scene wasn't the same one originally found by the hikers. Things were moved around, evidence was tampered with, and to this day, no one knows who did it or why. On November 26th, police contacted Iwaasa's mother and sister, who were both in Hawaii. They asked if they knew where Iwaasa was, but didn't provide any further details, aside from where his truck had been found. The mother and daughter rushed back to Lethbridge to begin searching for Iwaasa. It's been 5 years since Marshal Iwaasa's disappearance, and there have been little to no further developments. Now we'll be breaking down the theories to figure out what most likely happened. Marshal Iwaasa's sister and mother each had suspicions early on that his disappearance may have been due to foul play. They noticed that the pictures taken by the hikers were different than those by the investigators. Upon visiting the scene with the burnt-out truck, they also saw that some of the personal items nearby did not belong to Iwaasa. For example, the Xbox did not belong to Iwaasa. His own Xbox and PlayStation were back in Calgary in the basement unit still. Iwaasa's sister, Fogan, also theorized that it would not have been uncommon for Marshal to wait around to open the storage locker. She felt that if he was determined to get his stuff, that it wouldn't be out of the question that he would wait through the night to get in. She was quoted as saying, "If he's determined to get something or needed something that he drove down from Calgary to get, he would just wait it out." Fogan has also repeatedly pointed out that Iwaasa would have needed to have records of financial transactions in order to get gas along the 14-hour drive to the area. When she and the rest of the Iwaasa family drove to the area, they reportedly gassed up 3 separate times. Over the course of the past few years, Fogan has pushed for Canadian authorities to investigate the case as a criminal matter. The RCMP has kept the items from the crime scene, but they have not conducted any further testing. She's quoted as saying, "We don't know whose DNA is up there. We don't know whose fingerprints are up there. They just have the items, but they aren't running them." In a press release, Lethbridge Police said, "The evidence cannot be DNA tested by the RCMP crime lab unless officers have reasonable grounds to believe a DNA-designated criminal offence has been committed. At this time, no such evidence or grounds exist." The RCMP have their own theories as to what happened to Iwaasa. They believe that he was suffering from stress around dropping out of school. Not only that, but they have pointed to his lapse in cell phone payments as an abnormal occurrence. They also believe that there was no one but Iwaasa at the site when the truck was burned. Eventually, the RCMP turned over their investigation to the Lethbridge Police Department. The Lethbridge Police released a statement believing that Iwaasa had become withdrawn in recent months due to stress. They also said, quote, "No evidence to suggest a criminal offence had been committed. Also, no evidence to suggest that anyone other than Iwaasa was present when the vehicle was burned." Ultimately, the police suggested that Iwaasa may have run off or decided to end things. Iwaasa's family and most people who have supported the case disagree. Many other theories online believe that Iwaasa's disappearance was related to another man who went missing in that region. Among the personal belongings spread around the truck was a cooler which many believe belonged to Daniel Rioch. Rioch went missing in the Squamish Valley on November 29, 2019. This was not far from the burnt-out truck. One online sleuth believes the killers were two residents nearby Pemberton with criminal histories, including robbing storage units. The two were friends with Rioch. They believe that the pair drove to Lethbridge and attempted to rob Iwaasa. Once they killed him, they dumped his body along the drive back to the Pemberton area. They dumped Rioch's belongings and burned the truck. A few days later, once Rioch finds out they included his belongings at the crime scene, there is a confrontation. Rioch ends up getting killed as well. Ultimately, we may never know what happened to Iwaasa, but we can speculate using a common-sense approach. We've simplified many aspects of the case and have a theory as to what most likely happened. In most cases, authorities have a handle on what most likely happened to the missing person. While they are closest to the case and certainly have the most resources, it's clear that the RCMP did not use everything they had at their disposal. No DNA testing was conducted, nor any fire testing on the vehicle. Leaning purely on background, authorities believed that Marshal Iwaasa had either ended things or decided to pursue a new life. However, he had just finished paying off his truck. Not only that, but he actively spent time with family and friends. Despite failing academically, there's not much reason to believe he would turn his back on the life he was building. Using the most basic facts in this case, there are a few elements that are undeniable. 1. Iwaasa's financial trail ends on November 19th, so it's likely he never left the Lethbridge area alone. 2. It would be unreasonable to wait for hours on end to access his storage unit. He could have easily returned to his mother's house and come back the next day or driven back to Calgary if needed. According to Lethbridge crime mapping, the overwhelming type of crime in the area are property crimes. What most likely happened to Marshal Iwaasa was an attempted robbery turned into violent crime. Given the amount of time that Iwaasa spent at the unit, it seemed that whoever was with him was determined to gain access to his personal belongings. While their motive is unknown, it's clear that going to a storage facility so late at night would have given a perpetrator plenty of opportunity. Sadly, we may never truly know what happened to Marshal Iwaasa. Every day that passes is more time he could have spent with family and loved ones that is tragically lost. Of course, we hope that these questions and this case will finally come to a close and bring peace to those who lost him.